Across 1,000 worlds, they whisper about a species born on a small blue rock, a species that should have been nothing. But nothing is what they refuse to be. Welcome to HFY Apexion. My name is Commander Elise Maren Cordova. I was 46 years old when we reached Kepler 442b. I am 49 now and I will not see 50. I am recording this because the United Nations Deep Reach Authority gave me 1,600 people. I brought back 411. The rest did not die in combat. They did not die from accident or malfunction or disease. They died because I made a decision, and the decision was correct, and being correct is the thing I cannot survive. This is not a mission report. This is a confession that happens to contain the answer to the oldest question our species ever asked. Where is everybody? I know now. I wish I did not. Kepler 442b was the jewel. You have to understand that. 37 years of unmanned survey probes, 18 confirmed biosignatures, an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere within 2% of Earth standard, liquid water, stable magnetosphere, average surface temperature of 14 degrees Celsius. It was so perfect that when the data came back, 3 separate review boards ran contamination audits because nobody believed the numbers were real. They were real. The Deep Reach Authority built the Magellan in 9 years. Crew of 1,600, 12 science divisions, agricultural teams, geological teams, first contact linguists, child psychologists, because there were 31 children aboard, families. Because this was not a scouting mission. This was the seed. I was not the first choice for command. Admiral Chen had the post. He died 11 months before launch cardiac event during a simulation run. I was his executive officer. The authority offered the chair to 3 people before me. 2 declined. 1 accepted and then resigned 9 days later. I was the remainder. That should have told me something. The transit took 14 months at 0.72 C. Alcubierre-derived compression drive. You do not feel the speed. You feel the hum. A subsonic vibration that lives in your molars and the base of your skull. And after a few weeks you stop noticing it. And then one day the drive cuts and the silence hits you like a wall of cold water, and you realize your body had been clenching against something for over a year. We dropped into the Kepler 442 system on March 9, 2018-70. Optical confirmation of the planet within 40 minutes. Green, brown, white cloud bands. 2 small moons. A yellow-white sun sitting fat and stable in the viewport. Dr. Yuan, my chief xenobiologist, stood next to me on the bridge and said one word. Garden. She was right, it looked like a garden, organized, tended, impossibly, improbably alive. We entered orbit and deployed the first survey package within 6 hours, 12 atmospheric probes, 4 geological landers, 2 ocean buoys. Every single one returned data that confirmed the unmanned surveys. Except for one detail that the unmanned surveys had not caught, because the unmanned surveys had not been looking for it. There were cities, not ruins, not remnants, not fossils or geological mimicry or crystalline formations that looked like architecture from certain angles. Cities, thousands of them, intact, structurally sound, roads connecting them in rational networks, ports along coastlines, bridges spanning rivers, agricultural grids visible from orbit, perfectly geometric, still holding the color of whatever had been planted in them. Empty. Every single one. I grounded the colony plan within 1 hour of the city confirmation. 1,600 people screaming at me through the chain of command. Families who had spent 2 years in transit. Scientists who had devoted decades to this mission. I did not care. You do not land 1,600 people on a planet covered in abandoned cities until you understand why the cities are abandoned. I sent down 3 survey teams, 12 people each. Full biohazard protocol. Armed, which I caught grief for because the xenolinguists thought weapons would contaminate potential first contact conditions. There was no one to contact. Team 1 landed in the largest coastal city, population capacity estimated at 400,000. The architecture was beautiful, flowing organic lines, building materials that appeared to be a calciumite composite grown, not manufactured. Streets wide enough for vehicles but no vehicles present. No vehicles anywhere on the planet, as it turned out. Parks, fountains, dry fountains but fountains, public spaces with what appeared to be stages or platforms for assembly. No furniture, No personal effects, no clothing, no tools, no art, no garbage. Dr. Yuen described it as a house where someone had removed everything except the walls. Team 2 landed in an inland agricultural zone. The fields were still structured. Soil analysis showed high-yield cultivation going back at least 800 years. Whatever had been grown there, it had been grown systematically, rotated properly, and maintained with what Yuen called textbook sustainability. The irrigation channels still worked. Rainwater flowed through them while our team stood there watching. No storage facilities, no barns, no processing infrastructure. The food had been grown, and then nothing. Team 3 found the library. I am calling it a library. The team's official designation was Information Repository Complex. It was the only structure on the planet that contained anything inside it. A single building in a mid-latitude city, unremarkable from the outside, and inside it held what Dr. Okafor estimated to be 9 million individual data storage units. Crystal lattice. Each one roughly the size of a human thumb, embedded in a wall matrix that covered every interior surface from floor to ceiling across 6 floors. 9 million records, in a civilization that had otherwise removed every trace of itself. That is not abandonment, that is a message. Okafor's team spent 11 days building an interface. The crystals stored information in a light-frequency encoding system that was, frankly, elegant. Not complex, not encrypted. Elegant, as if it had been designed to be read by someone who did not share the language or the biology or the sensory apparatus of whoever made it. The first crystal Okafor decoded contained a name, a designation phonetically approximated as Tesserath. Below the name, a date. Below the date, a single data structure that, when visualized, produced a 3-dimensional map of a star system. Not Kepler 442, a different system. 61 light-years away. The second crystal contained a different name, a different date, a different star system. The third, the fourth, the fifth. 9 million crystals, 9 million names, 9 million star systems. Okafor came to me on day 14 with a face I had never seen her wear before. Pale, not frightened. Dr. Elise Okafor did not do frightened. She did something worse. She looked confused in a way that suggested the confusion went all the way down to the foundation. She said, "Commander, each crystal is a species." I asked her to clarify. She said, "Each record contains a name, a date, a star system of origin, and a developmental profile. Biology, culture, technological markers, duration of civilization, peak population. 9 million species. And one more data point," she said. "Every single record ends the same way, a final entry, a single symbol that repeats across all 9 million records. I cannot translate it yet, but it is always the same, and it is always the last thing recorded." I asked her what she thought the symbol meant. She stared at me for a long time and said, "Concluded." We spent 6 weeks in the library. I pulled staff from every division, geologists, linguists, biologists, mathematicians, even the agricultural engineers, because the cultivation data on the crystals matched the fields outside, and I needed people who could read farming as a language. The picture assembled itself with the patience of a tide coming in. One detail at a time, each one small, each one ordinary, and each one, placed next to the others, a little more terrifying than the last. The 9 million species were not contemporaries, they were sequential. The earliest date on any crystal corresponded to roughly 4.2 billion years ago. The most recent was approximately 12,000 years before our arrival. 4.2 billion years, 9 million species. That averages to one civilization every 470 years across the entire galaxy. They were not rare, they were constant, and every single one of them ended, not violently. That is what I need you to understand. There were no impact signatures, no war records, no environmental collapses, no plagues, no resource depletion curves, no external threats cataloged, no predatory species moving from system to system consuming others. Each civilization followed what Okafor started calling the developmental curve. They emerged, they grew, they developed technology, they reached out into their local space, they built, they flourished. And then, at a point that varied in absolute time but was remarkably consistent in relative developmental position, they stopped. Not declined, not collapsed, not regressed, stopped. Populations dropped to zero within 1 to 3 generations. Infrastructure remained intact. In many cases, the species had time to archive itself, to leave records, to catalog its own existence in the same crystal format we were reading. They had seen this library, or one like it, and they had added their own entry before the end. Dr. Ewan pulled me aside on week 4. We were standing in a corridor of the Magellan, and she had the expression of someone who had been carrying something heavy and needed to set it down or break. "It's not a library," she said. "It's a monument, a graveyard catalog. Every species that reached a certain threshold added its own headstone and then went quiet." I said, "Went quiet how? Where did they go?" "That is exactly the question," she said, "and I think the answer is the part we should be afraid of." The developmental profiles were detailed enough to reconstruct trajectories. Okafor's team built models, 12,000 data points across 9 million species, and the curve was always the same shape, always. Emergence, growth, expansion. A peak not of power, but of something the crystals measured that we initially translated as complexity, but that UN later argued was closer to awareness. A point at which a species became fully aware of itself, its environment, its position in the cosmos, its limitations, its trajectory. And then a turning inward, a withdrawal from expansion, a consolidation, a quieting, and then nothing. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Tanaka, my chief of security, put it bluntly during a staff meeting. "They all grew up," he said. "They reached adulthood, and then they left, every single one. The question is, left to where?" No one answered him. Because the data did not say. I need to tell you about my daughter. Maya was 11 when we launched. She is one of the 31 children aboard. She has my late husband's eyes and my mother's stubbornness. She wanted to be a geologist. She used to collect rocks from every park we visited in Colorado, label them with masking tape and a marker, and line them up on her windowsill in order of what she called interestingness. She was the reason I took the command, not the mission, not the legacy, not humanity's future among the stars. My daughter. Because the review board said Kepler 442b was the safest destination in the catalog, and I wanted Maya to grow up with a sky that did not have a carbon parts per million counter in the corner of every weather report. I am telling you this because what happened next is inseparable from her. On week 7, Okafor's team cracked the final symbol, the one that appeared at the end of every record. Concluded. It was not a word, it was a compressed data packet. Each instance of the symbol contained a unique payload specific to the species it terminated. Okafor had been reading it as a label. It was an invitation. Inside each terminal symbol was a set of coordinates. Not spatial coordinates. Not a location in the galaxy. A frequency. A resonance pattern tuned to the specific neurobiology of the species in question. And attached to that frequency, a description translated loosely, imperfectly, but consistently across hundreds of independent decryptions that read, "The threshold is open. You have reached the boundary of physical complexity. What lies beyond is not reducible to spatial or material terms. To cross is to cease being what you are and to become what you are capable of. The crossing is voluntary. The crossing is permanent. The crossing has been made by every species that reached this shore before you. You are not the first. You will not be the last. But you must choose. 9 million species. Every one of them chose to cross. Every one of them left their cities, their fields, their infrastructure, their bodies behind, added their name to the catalog, and stepped through a door that, as far as our physics could determine, did not exist. Transcendence, apotheosis, upload, rapture. Whatever word you reach for, it is the wrong one. Because every word we have assumes a destination, and the data described a transformation so total that the concept of destination ceased to apply. The Fermi Paradox. Where is everybody? They graduated, all of them. Every civilization that ever reached maturity looked at the material universe, looked at what lay beyond it, and chose to leave. And the library existed to tell the next species in line that the door was open. Okafor isolated the human-specific frequency on day 53. I need you to sit with that sentence. She was not given it. She was not offered it. The library did not activate or respond to our presence. There was no alien intelligence monitoring us, no caretaker, no guide. The library was a static archive. But buried in the data, in the developmental models, in the biological parameters, in the neurological maps that the archive contained for every cataloged species, there was enough information to extrapolate. Okafor's team identified 17 species with neurobiology close enough to human architecture to serve as templates. They mapped the resonance patterns, they found the commonalities, and from those commonalities they derived a frequency that would theoretically interact with human neural tissue, she told me in my ready room. Just us. The door closed. It's not a signal you listen to, she said. It's a state you enter. The frequency induces a cascade of neural reorganization that, I don't have the right word, it opens something. A perceptual channel that isn't accessible under normal conditions, and once it opens, the data suggests it cannot be closed. The transformation propagates. It completes itself. And the person? The person is no longer a person, not in any sense we can measure. Their physical body ceases to function, not death cessation. The biological substrate becomes inert. Whatever they become exists in a domain we do not have instruments to detect. I asked her the question I was required to ask. Is it real? She did not hesitate. 9 million species thought so, every single one, across 4 billion years. Species with physics more advanced than ours by orders of magnitude. Species that could model reality at scales we cannot imagine. They all looked at this data and they all walked through the door. That is not the same as it being real. No, she said, it is not. I ordered the frequency data classified, restricted to senior staff only, 12 people. The order held for 9 days. On day 62, Dr. Liang, junior xenoneurologist, accessed the frequency data through a terminal that should have been locked. I do not know if the lock failed or if someone on senior staff shared their credentials. I have spent 3 years trying to determine which, and I cannot. Liang did not listen to the frequency. Listening is the wrong concept. He ran it through a neural interface that he had been using for routine cognitive mapping. The interface translated the frequency into a direct cortical stimulation pattern. The transformation took 11 seconds. I watched the security footage. His face did not show pain. It showed something I have no word for, an expression I have never seen on a human face. Recognition, perhaps, as if he had spent his entire life looking for something and found it in the space between one heartbeat and the next. His body went still, not rigid, not collapsed. Still, the way a lake goes still after the last ripple fades. His vital signs flatlined simultaneously, heart, brain, respiration. Not sequentially the way death works, but all at once, as if the systems did not fail but simply became irrelevant. He was gone, and 47 minutes later his lab partner, Dr. Rena Vasquez, used the same interface. The contagion was not biological, it was informational. By day 65, 19 people had crossed. I locked down every neural interface on the ship. I quarantined the library data. I posted armed guards on the server rooms. It did not matter. The frequency was simple enough to be described verbally. A mathematical structure, numbers, ratios, phase relationships. You could write it on a napkin. And once someone understood the structure, truly understood it, not just memorized the numbers, but grasped the mathematical object they described, the transformation began. It was knowledge that changed you. Not a weapon, not a drug, not a technology. Knowledge. By day 70 we had lost 112 people. They did not sneak. They did not steal access. They asked. They came to me, one at a time or in small groups, and they asked for permission to cross. And when I said no, some of them obeyed, and some of them found the information anyway, and some of those shared it with others. And there was no way to contain an idea that wanted to be free without becoming something I was not willing to become. Tanaka came to me on day 71. He stood in my quarters. He was a serious man, compact, disciplined, the kind of officer who made you feel safer just by being in the room. "Commander," he said, "I need to tell you something before I tell you something else." I waited. The first thing is that I understand the frequency. Okafor described the mathematical structure during a senior staff briefing and I could not unhear it. I have been carrying it in my head for 6 days. The transformation has not begun, which means there is a volitional component. You have to choose it. It does not force itself on you. And the second thing? He looked at the floor. Hiroshi Tanaka, who had faced down armed boarding parties in the Callisto corridor and never looked at the floor. The second thing is that I want to. Every hour I want to more. Not because something is compelling me, because I have seen the math, and the math is, it is the most beautiful thing I have ever encountered. It is a door, and on the other side of that door is everything we have ever wondered about, and I can feel it, and I am choosing not to walk through it, and that choice is costing me something I do not know how to name. I asked him to stay. He said, I will stay as long as you need me to, but I need you to understand that staying is not neutral. It is not the default. Staying is the active choice, and it is the harder one. I convened what was left of the senior staff. 8 of the original 12. 4 had crossed. I put one question on the table. Do we bring this home? Dr. Ewan spoke first. If we bring the frequency data back to Earth, it will propagate. It cannot be contained. It is an idea, not a substance. Within a generation, maybe less, every human being will have access to it. And based on what we have seen aboard this ship, a significant percentage will choose to cross. This is not speculation. 9 million species. 100% conversion rate. Humanity will not be the exception. Chief Engineer Moreau spoke second. Humanity might be the exception. We don't know. 19 people on this ship resisted. Some of them understood the frequency and chose to stay. That has never happened before, as far as the archive shows. The archive does not track individuals, Okafor corrected. It tracks species. We do not know how many individuals in other species resisted temporarily before eventually crossing. We only know the endpoint. Tanaka spoke last. The question is not whether humanity will survive exposure. The question is whether we have the right to make that choice for 8 billion people. If this is real, genuinely real, then keeping it from them is keeping them from something 9 million civilizations considered the purpose of existence. And if it is not real, if it is some kind of neurological trap, a siren song encoded in mathematics, then bringing it home is an extinction event. The room was quiet. We cannot know which it is, I said. No, Tanaka said, we cannot. The ship split. Not violently, not along lines of anger or ideology. It split the way water splits around a stone naturally, inevitably, following the shape of what was underneath. Those who wanted to cross gathered in the forward sections. Those who wanted to stay gathered aft. The children, the 31 children, including my daughter, were aft, because every parent aboard, every single one, chose to stay. I hold on to that. In every simulation I run in my sleepless hours, I hold on to that detail, because it is the only clean data point I have. No parent crossed. Not because they did not want to. I spoke to Dr. Ayana Cole, molecular biologist, mother of twin boys, age 6. She sat across from me in the mess hall and her hands were shaking. I can feel it, she said, like standing at the edge of the most beautiful cliff in the world and knowing you can fly. I believe it. I believe I would fly. But my boys cannot come with me. They do not have the cognitive architecture to understand the frequency yet. They would be alone. So you are staying. I am staying until they are old enough to choose for themselves, and then, I do not know. Ask me in 15 years. By day 90, 437 people had crossed. I stopped posting guards. I stopped locking terminals. Because Tanaka was right, the choice had to be voluntary in both directions, and making it harder to cross was not the same as making the case for staying. I made the case for staying every day. I walked the ship. I talked to people. I sat with them while they weighed the decision. I did not argue. I did not forbid. I asked them questions. What are you leaving behind? Who depends on you? What will the person who loves you most feel when your body goes still? These are not logical arguments. The frequency was logical. The mathematics were perfect. The evidence was 9 million data points deep. I had nothing that could compete with that on the level of reason. All I had was weight. The specific, irrational, irreducible weight of being a body in a room with other bodies. The resistance of flesh to the idea that flesh is optional. Some people, that was enough. Some people, it was not. I did not judge the ones who crossed. I need you to hear that. I did not then, and I do not now. They were not weak. They were not fooled. They may have been right. They may have stepped into something so far beyond what I can imagine that my grief would seem as quaint to them as a child crying because recess ended. But I was the commander, and the people who stayed were my responsibility, and the people who crossed were gone in a way that no search party could recover. On day 103, Maya came to my quarters. She sat on the edge of my bunk the way she used to sit on the edge of my bed in Colorado when she could not sleep. She was 12 by then, thin, serious, her father's eyes looking at me with a clarity I was not prepared for. "Mom," she said, "I know what the frequency is." My chest went cold. Tommy Liang told me. Before his dad crossed, he explained it. "The math, I understand it." I could not speak. "I'm not going," she said. "I don't want to. I want to be a geologist. I want to study the cities down there. I want to understand what they built, not where they went." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crystal, one of the small archive units from the library. She had labeled it with masking tape and a marker in her careful handwriting. It read, "Humans in progress." "We don't get a final entry yet," she said. "We're not done." On day 109, I ordered the library destroyed. "I need you to understand the calculus before you judge me." 1,163 people remained on the Magellan. Of those, approximately 300 had been exposed to the frequency data in some form. Of those 300, 187 reported experiencing the pull, the desire, the sense of a door standing open in the back of their minds. The archive contained the full frequency data for every species that had ever existed. 9 million templates. If it remained intact, someone in a year, in 10 years, in 100 would revisit it, would refine the human-specific frequency, would find a way to propagate it that was faster, more efficient, more compelling. The library was not a monument, it was a recruitment engine. Patient, passive, and perfect. It sat on a garden world and waited for curious species to come to it, because curious species always come, and once they understood what it contained, the math did the rest. 9 million species had not independently discovered the same door. They had been shown the same door by the same library, or a library like it. The crystals contained coordinates for other repositories on other worlds, and I would have bet my remaining years that every habitable planet in the galaxy had one. The trap, if it was a trap, was not the frequency. The trap was the garden, the perfect biosphere, the oxygen and the water and the green. "Come here," it said. "Come here and thrive. And while you thrive, find the library. And in the library, find the door." I do not know who built it. The archive contained no builder, no origin species, no first entry, only the second. Tanaka argued against destruction, the only time he and I raised our voices at each other in 20 years of service. "You are destroying the most significant discovery in the history of our species," he said. "I am keeping it from destroying us," I said. "That is not your decision to make." It became my decision when I was given 1,600 lives and lost over 1,000 to something I still cannot prove is real. He stared at me, his jaw worked, and then he said something I hear every night. "What if it is real, Elise? What if you are locking the door to heaven because you are afraid of what it costs to walk through?" I did not answer him. I gave the order. Moreau's engineering team brought the building down with controlled thermal charges. The crystals shattered. 9 million records, 9 million names, 4 billion years of galactic history. I destroyed it in an afternoon. The colonists who had wanted to cross watched from the ship's observation deck. Some of them wept. Some of them looked at me with something that was not anger but was worse, a kind of pity, as if I were a child who had broken something precious because I could not understand what it was. Maybe they were right. Maybe I am the monster of this story. I have had 3 years to decide, and I cannot. We did not colonize Kepler 442b. I gave the order to return to Earth on day 115. 411 people aboard. 31 children, all accounted for. Every parent present. The transit home took 14 months. I spent it writing this record. I spent it not sleeping. I spent it watching my daughter collect rock samples from the Magellan's hull plating and label them with masking tape. I spent it carrying the frequency in my head. Because I understand it. I have understood it since day 58, when Okafor described the structure in the briefing that Tanaka attended. I heard the same thing he heard. I saw the same beauty. I felt the same door. I have not told anyone this. For 3 years, I have sat with the door open in the back of my mind, and I have not walked through it. Not because I am stronger than the people who crossed. Not because I am more disciplined or more afraid or more committed to the flesh and bone reality of the world I can see and smell and touch. Because Maya labeled a crystal humans in progress, and she was right. We are not done. We have not finished being what we are. We have not exhausted what it means to have hands that build and eyes that weep and voices that carry across a room to find each other. We have not yet loved each other as well as we can. We have not yet failed as badly as we will, or forgiven as deeply as we must, or built the thing that will make a child's drawing of a blue sky feel like prophecy rather than memory. 9 million species reached the threshold and crossed. Humanity reached the threshold, and I am asking us to stay. Not forever, not out of fear, not because the door is false. I believe it is real, and I believe what lies beyond it is everything the archive promised, and I believe the people I lost are not dead, but transformed into something I do not have the capacity to grieve, because I do not have the capacity to imagine it. I am asking us to stay because we are not finished. The Magellan will reach Earth in 71 days. When we arrive, I will transmit this recording to the Deep Reach Authority. I will submit to whatever inquiry they convene. I will answer every question about the library, the frequency, the people I lost, the archive I destroyed, and I will not share the frequency. It lives in my head. It will die with me. If another ship reaches another garden world and finds another library, then that crew will face the same choice, and I cannot make it for them. But I can refuse to bring the door to Earth's doorstep. I can refuse to place the most beautiful and most dangerous idea in the history of consciousness in front of 8 billion people who have not seen what I have seen and cannot weigh what I have weighed. This is not courage. I want to be clear about that. This is not wisdom. This is a mother who looked at her daughter and decided that the universe can wait. Tanaka is still aboard. He has not crossed. Every day I see him in the corridors and I see the weight of what he carries, the door he chose not to walk through. And I know it costs him something I will never be able to repay. He stayed because I asked him to. That is all. When I asked him why last week, standing in the same corridor where UN first called the planet a garden, he said something I will carry alongside the frequency for the rest of however long I have. He said, "Because someone has to be here when your daughter finishes her catalog." The Fermi Paradox asks, where is everybody? Here is the answer, and it is not the one anyone wanted. They are not dead. They are not hiding. They are not beyond our detection or beneath our notice or locked behind some technological horizon we have not yet crossed. They are gone in a way that the word gone cannot hold. Transformed, transcended, translated into a state of being that the material universe does not have the grammar to describe. The galaxy is not empty because life is rare. The galaxy is empty because life is a chrysalis. And every species that ever reached maturity shed it and became something that does not need stars or planets or cities or bodies. The silence is not a graveyard. It is a graduation. And we are the students still sitting in the classroom after the bell is rung, not because we did not hear it, not because we do not know the door is open, but because we looked around at each other and decided we are not done with the lesson. Voice steadying, becoming something almost like warmth. I do not know if I made the right decision. I want to tell you that I am at peace, but I am not a liar, and this is a confession. And confessions are the place where you put down the version of yourself that can function and pick up the version that is true. The truth is this. I hear the frequency every night. I feel the door every morning. I carry the most beautiful thing I have ever encountered locked in the same skull that carries my daughter's face. And every day I choose her face. And every day the choice costs exactly as much as it did the day before. That is the human answer to the Fermi Paradox. Not that we cannot hear the music, that we can hear it every note, every harmonic, every impossible promise, and we choose to stay and build one more day. Maya is on the observation deck right now. She has her rock collection spread across a table. She is labeling samples from a world we are leaving behind, a world that was designed across geological time to be the most beautiful trap ever constructed. She is categorizing mineral structures with masking tape and a marker, and her handwriting is getting better, and she is humming something I do not recognize. She is 12 years old, and she knows the answer to the oldest question in the universe, and she does not care, because she has rocks to label, and a catalog to build, and a species to finish being part of. Humans in progress. That is the entry. That is the answer. That is why, when every other voice in the cosmos went silent, one small blue rock kept making noise. Not because we could not hear the quiet, because we were not done being loud. And that is where this story ends, but the universe has countless more to tell. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and join the Apexion, because the next story might be the one you never forget.